You wake to the particular silence that follows rain. It is a different quiet from ordinary morning quiet. Something has been removed from the air, the low, even percussion of water on stone that you fell asleep to, and in its place there is a clean absence, a held breath. The kind of quiet that belongs to a world that has been thoroughly washed and is still deciding what to do next. Your eyes open slowly. The room is dim. The small window above the work table faces east, and the light coming through it now is early. Pale gold at the very edges, white everywhere else, the kind of light that arrives before the sun has fully committed to being above the horizon. The curtain you made from the old reddish-brown fabric hangs still. No wind. The air in the room is cool and very clear. You lie for a moment longer. The blanket is warm. The cot is familiar. Your body is in that pleasant intermediate state between sleep and waking where the day has not yet made any particular demands of you, and you are aware of this state with enough appreciation to stay in it a little while before you relinquish it. From somewhere outside, distant, muffled by stone and the particular acoustic quality of Thistlewick's narrow streets, a bird is singing. Something small. A wren, perhaps, or one of the sparrows that nest in the eaves of the building across the alley. A rapid, precise, unhurried song, going through its material with the confidence of a creature that has performed this same set since long before the town was here, and will continue performing it long after. You breathe in. The air still has last night's rain in it. Stone and damp and the particular mineral coolness that lingers after autumn rain, cleaner than summer rain, sharper, carrying something from higher up, from the mountains perhaps, from the Grey Vale foothills where the rain begins its long journey down. And under that, the shop. Even from here, through the door, you can smell it. Beeswax. Chamomile. The faint resinous quality of the old wood shelves. The ghost of last night's stove fire, wood smoke reduced to its quietest form, which is not quite a smell so much as a warmth in the air that the nostrils interpret as memory. The bird outside finishes its phrase. Starts again, from the beginning. You push back the blanket and sit up. The flagstones of the back room are cold through your soles when you stand, but pleasantly so. The clean cold of stone that has been resting through the night, holding its own temperature without the complication of human heat. You stand on them for a moment, and the cold works its way up through your feet, and you are fully awake. Through the open doorway, the front room. The shop in the morning is different from the shop in the evening. At night it draws inward, the candlelight makes a small warm world of it, contained, amber-toned. In the morning, with the light coming through the east-facing window above the counter, it opens. Softly, without drama, but opens. The green and amber glass catches the early light and holds it differently than it holds candlelight. Cooler, more transparent. The herbs along the right wall are greener, more present. The darkness that gathered in the corners last night has retreated entirely. And on the back shelf, in its new place between the two older bottles. The green bottle from the harbor. In the morning light it is simply itself. Old glass, clouded with age, the mark on its base no more or less visible than it was last night. Whatever you thought you saw in the candlelight is not there now. Which is, you think, exactly as it should be. Some things reserve certain qualities for certain hours. You leave it to the morning and go to light the stove. The stove's door opens with its small iron sound. Inside, the embers from last night, you had thought they would be long cold, but they are not entirely. A little residual warmth lives in the deepest part of the ash, and you coax it. A small piece of dry kindling, laid carefully. You blow on it once, twice, gently, the way you were taught, and the kindling catches at the third attempt, a thin orange line running along its length before it commits to flame. You feed it carefully. First the small pieces, then the medium, and finally one good-sized piece of wood from the box beside the stove that you filled last week, and that is still half full, which is a satisfying thing to discover on a Thursday morning. The fire takes everything you give it with steady appreciation. You close the stove door, but not all the way. Leave it cracked, the way that draws air and builds heat fastest, and you go for the kettle. The morning ritual of water is one of the better small rituals. You have a large ceramic ewer in the back room that you fill on Mondays and Thursdays from the well in Market Square. The stone well at the center, the one older than the square itself, the one that has never gone dry even in the driest summers anyone can remember. Thursday. You will need to go to the well today anyway, but not yet. There is enough in the ewer from Monday. You fill the kettle with practiced economy. Back to the stove, which is already warmer. The kindling has done its work, and the larger pieces are beginning to find their voice. A low, interior crackle, the fire establishing itself, settling into the work of the day. You hang the kettle. Stand back. The morning light through the east window is creeping across the counter now, reaching the amber bottles one by one as the sun angles higher. Each bottle it touches seems to briefly deepen, to intensify its color. Amber becoming something closer to honey, closer to old gold, and then the light moves on and the bottle returns to what it was. You watch this happen without urgency. There is nowhere to be yet. Thursday is a market day, which means later this morning you will put on your coat and walk to Market Square, and there will be the honey seller and the mushroom woman and 3 or 4 other stalls arranged around the old oak, and the particular Thursday morning quality of the square, which is busier than other days without ever quite feeling busy, more like a version of the square that has decided to have company. But that is later. Now there is tea, and the fire, and the quiet. You take the thyme from the windowsill while the water heats. The thyme needs repotting before winter, which you have been noting mentally for several days now and have not yet done anything about, which is fine. The noting is its own kind of attention. The thyme does not seem distressed. It is compact and silver green and smells exactly like itself when you run a finger along it. That clean savory smell that is one of the more complete smells in the plant world, the kind that doesn't need anything else around it to be fully realized. You set it back. The rosemary is slightly damp at the soil line, which means it was watered sufficiently last night and does not need more, and you leave it. The chamomile you had been watching all week has finally, overnight, gone decisively over. The stems yellowed, the dried flower heads papery and brown, past the stage where they were still useful, into the stage where they are simply going back to what they came from. You take the pot and carry it to the back room, where the compost bin lives under the work table. There is a feeling when you do this, when a plant has run its course and you acknowledge it, that is not quite sadness and not quite satisfaction but lives between them. The chamomile gave you a good season. You had harvested 3 good batches of flowers from it, dried them carefully, and they are in crocks on the shelf where they will be useful all winter. What is going into the compost now is the husk of something that did its work entirely. You pat the rim of the pot, which is not sentimental, you tell yourself. Back in the front room, the kettle is beginning. You take down the teapot, the wide, squat one, lid wobbling as always, and you measure the chamomile, and pour, and cover it, and wait. Today you might see Sable Greenmere, which you mentioned to yourself last night. A thought without urgency, a thought in the pleasant category of things to do that are not obligations. She had said something at the Thursday market last week about a new delivery of dried elderflower that she thought you would want to see. You had said you would come by, and you had not yet come by, and today is Thursday again, and you will. The elderflower from the southern coastal valley. Sable always orders it from the same supplier, a woman she has corresponded with for years, someone whose name you know but have not met, has a quality that the local elderflower doesn't quite replicate. Something in the soil or the climate of where it grows. You use it in a late summer preparation, a gentle tonic for the transition into autumn, something that eases the body's shift from the long light days into the shorter ones. You had run low on it in September. The teapot steams. You pour. The chamomile smell rises and opens, and the morning takes its first full breath. After tea, the sleep draught. You had said yesterday that you would begin it this morning, and you are a person who begins things when they say they will begin them, so you go to the back room and you take down the passion flower, dried, properly, the bundles from September still good, and the valerian root, which you ground yesterday and which sits in its small jar, pale and fine, smelling faintly medicinal, the kind of smell that is not pleasant but is purposeful. There is a difference. The preparation is methodical. You have made this draught enough times that your hands know the proportions before your mind has retrieved them, which is one of the reliable small pleasures of long practice. The way the body learns a thing so thoroughly that the mind can be elsewhere. Observing, rather than directing. Watching itself work. You measure the passion flower into the large ceramic mortar, the one you use only for the sleep preparations, which has absorbed years of these same ingredients and smells, on its own, of what it has been used for, which is itself a kind of sleep. A stone that has been dreaming. The pestle grinds slowly. You do not rush this. The passion flower breaks down in stages. First the larger pieces, then smaller fragments, then finally a texture between coarse and fine. That is what this preparation wants. You can see it, you can feel it through the pestle, the way a thing tells you when it is done if you are paying attention. Not the finest powder. Something with a little texture still in it, something that still remembers its shape. You add the valerian. The smell in the back room changes. The mild green quality of the passion flower absorbs the earthier note of the valerian, and together they become something distinct from either. Something that belongs in a back room in an old shop in autumn. Something that is part of the smell of what it means to make things for people. You grind slowly. The morning is very quiet outside. You are aware of the particular quality of a Thursday morning before the market is properly underway. The town going about its preparation without yet being prepared. The sound of a cart somewhere on the cobblestones. A door. A voice, without words at this distance. The gradual filling of the air with the texture of a day that is going to have some life in it. You grind until you are satisfied, and then a little more, because the little more is usually right. By the time you are cleaned up and have eaten bread, this time with the last of the soft cheese, which is doing its best, the sun has properly risen, and the morning light in the front room has shifted from the cool pale gold of early to something warmer, more definite. The amber bottles glow with it. The herbs on the left wall cast thin shadows. The cobblestones of Sable Street visible through the window are still wet from last night's rain, and catch the light in small glittering lines that run in the direction of Market Square. You have left the sleep draught preparation at the steeping stage, the mortar's contents in a large ceramic jar with a tight lid, where they will sit for 2 days in the cool of the back room before the next stage. This is not impatient work. It asks you to begin it, and then leave it, and come back, and begin the next thing, and leave it again. You have always found this quality in it reassuring rather than frustrating. Some things take the time they take. You wash your hands. Take your coat from the hook. The coat is wool, dark gray, a little long, with deep pockets that you have filled and emptied so many times that they have taken on the slight stretch of long use. You put it on, and the weight of it settles on your shoulders in a way that is purely familiar. The morning coat, the going-out coat. At the door you pause. The shop behind you. You have a habit of looking at it when you leave, which you developed without intending to. A quick survey, a last check that everything is in its place. The candles unlit for the morning. The stove going steadily, the small orange glow through the vent enough to confirm it. The bottles on their shelves. The green bottle in its place at the back. Everything in its place. You pull the door shut. The bell speaks its low worn note to the empty shop. Sable Street in the morning after rain is one of the finer streets you know. The cobblestones are deeply cleaned. You can see each individual stone clearly, its shape and worn surface and the particular way it sits against its neighbors, the mortar between them dark with water. They gleam without being flashy about it. A quiet gleam, the gleam of things that do not need to announce that they are beautiful. The buildings on either side are darker than they will be this afternoon, the stone still absorbing light rather than reflecting it, and the ivy on the opposite wall. The wall of the old warehouse that has been partially converted into 3 small workrooms, one of which belongs to a woman who does natural dyeing, and who you have spoken to twice and whose name you keep meaning to ask again, is the most saturated green it ever is, each leaf holding a small galaxy of last night's rain along its surface. You walk slowly. There is no particular reason to hurry this morning, and so you do not hurry. The alley that connects Sable Street to the passage toward Market Square is narrow enough that you could touch both walls at once if you held your arms out, though you never have, and it smells of old stone and the particular damp paper smell that comes from the back wall of the bookbinder's workshop, which opens onto the alley from the Ink Quarter side. You pass through it and the smell passes with you, brief and specific, and then you are in the wider street that runs along the back of the Ink Quarter toward the square. 2 people pass, going the other way. Nods, small words of greeting, morning and cold one, and, it is, the particular economy of conversation between people who know each other by sight and by reputation, and by years of these small exchanges, for whom more would be too much and less would be somehow wrong. This is what community is, you think. Not the large moments. Not the gatherings and the occasions. It is this. The nod. The 2 words. The unspoken acknowledgement that you have both been here long enough to know each other's faces and to feel, when you pass each other in the early morning after the rain, something that is the word, belonging, distilled into a gesture so small it barely registers. You turn the corner into Market Square. On ordinary days, Market Square has the quality of a room that has been prepared for something that has not yet arrived. The oak at its center, the cobblestones around it, the well, the storefronts on 3 sides, all of it arranged around an expectation. On Thursdays, the expectation is fulfilled. The stalls are already setting up. There are 6 of them today, which is a good number for this time of year. Not the high summer count, which can reach 10 or 11, but enough to give the square the particular alive quality of a market morning. Canvas awnings in earth colors, green and deep rust and undyed cream. Tables loaded with their various goods. The smell of it, which is its own particular mixture. The honey seller's table, which is warm and sweet even from across the square. The green vegetable smell from the garden produce stall, the clean bright smell of the cut flower seller, who is here until the first hard frost, something faintly spiced from a stall you haven't identified yet from this distance. And above all of this, the smell of bread. Fenwick's Bakery is on Fenwick Lane, not the square, but the smell travels without difficulty. By 6 in the morning it has reached Market Square, which is several streets away, and it is one of the most reliable features of any Thursday morning. You have told people about it, visitors, passing travelers, people writing to ask what Thistlewick is like, And you always mention this. On Thursday morning, the whole center of town smells of Fenwick's bread. It is not possible to be in a bad state of mind when you can smell it. You stand for a moment at the edge of the square and breathe it in. The old oak is losing its leaves. They are coming down not in a dramatic fall but in the gradual, deliberate way that Thistlewick's oak prefers. One at a time, or a few at a time, spiraling down in the windless morning air, and settling on the cobblestones around the base of the tree with the quiet intention of something that knows exactly where it is going. The leaves on the ground are already golden brown, their edges beginning to crisp. By next week the tree will be half bare. By the week after, spare. You walk toward the honey cellar first. She is always there, has been always there, as long as you have lived in Thistlewick. You do not know her first name, or if you once knew it you have lost it in the way you lose things that have been called by their role long enough. She is the honey cellar, and that is its own complete name. She is a small woman, considerably older than she looks, with hair gone to the silver of old pewter, and a way of standing at her table that suggests she could stand there through any kind of weather indefinitely, which you believe to be true. Her table is generous with jars. The honey catches the morning light and goes amber and old gold, the same colors as your shop's bottles. You notice this every Thursday, and it always seems newly interesting, and the jars are arranged in a particular order she has, from lightest to darkest, from the clear pale blossom honey at one end to the deep, almost molasses dark late summer buckwheat at the other. Morning, she says. Morning. Good crowd for the cold. She considers. People stock up when the rain starts. Everyone wanting to put things by. She gestures at the table, an invitation rather than a sales pitch. You look. The summer lavender honey is nearly gone. There are 2 jars left. The wildflower, which is what you use most, is well stocked. 2 of the wildflower, you say, and 1 of the late summer. She wraps them in paper without ceremony and passes them across. You pay, and she tucks the coins away in the particular wooden box she always uses, its lid worn shiny from years of being opened and closed. That elderflower honey in yet? You ask. She tilts her head slightly. December, maybe. If the weather was right in summer. I'm waiting to hear from the beekeeper. When you know, I'd take 2. I'll remember. She will. She remembers everything of this kind. You have never doubted it. You make your way around the square. The mushroom woman is here, which means the season has turned completely. She appears at the first frost, which is not quite here yet but is clearly imminent in the behavior of the morning. The way the cold settled into the air last night, the way the wet cobblestones are trying to steam in the thin sunlight, and she sells the autumn mushrooms from the bramble, which she forages herself, and dried mushrooms she has prepared through the summer, and occasionally small jars of mushroom paste, which you have eaten on bread and found surprisingly profound. Her table smells of the forest floor, of something deeply earthy and alive, and you stop there too and buy a small paper bag of the dried porcini, which you use in the autumn tonics, and a single jar of the paste, which you buy for yourself and which has nothing to do with the shop. She is quiet, the mushroom woman. Not unfriendly, she nods and thanks you and wraps things with care, but economical, as though she has allocated her words for the morning and is spending them carefully. You appreciate this about her. The cut flower stall is a young man you don't know well. He took over from his mother 2 seasons ago, and the stall looks slightly different under his management, a little less arranged, a little more abundance, great armfuls of things rather than careful groupings, and he has today the last late roses, very dark red, almost brown at the edges, chrysanthemums in orange and pale yellow, the dried flower arrangements he makes through the autumn, everlasting in amber and rust. You consider the dried arrangement and decide against it, then change your mind, and go back and buy it. It is a good size for the counter near the window where the morning light would fall on it. By the time you have done the circuit and are standing at the edge of the square with your basket, the square has filled a little more. Neighbors you recognize, some whose names you know and some whose faces are themselves enough, the texture of a town going about its Thursday morning. A child runs past, the youngest of the Fenwick grandchildren, heading toward the honey cellar at a pace that suggests specific intent. She stops when she sees you, suddenly and completely. "Good morning," she says, with the precision of a child who has been recently instructed on greetings. "Good morning," you say. She looks at your basket, then at you. Then she goes. You watch her negotiate the honey cellar with the focused determination of someone negotiating a very important transaction. The honey seller assists her gravely. You find the Greenmere apothecary at the far edge of Market Square, where the square meets the street that runs toward the Ink Quarter. Greenmere's has been here longer than anything else on this side of the square, and looks it, not in a decrepit way, but in the way of something that has been continuously cared for through many generations, so that the care itself has become a quality of the building. The sign above the door is hand-painted, dark green on cream, the paint freshened recently. You can tell because the green is slightly brighter than the rest of the faded paint context around it, and there is something pleasing about this discrepancy, this evidence of ongoing attention. The door is open. From inside, the smell. Greenmere's smells different from your shop, which you have always found interesting, given that both of you work with plants and remedies and old techniques and inherited methods. The difference is in the proportions, you think. Sable's shop runs warmer in its base notes, more floral, with the dried lavender and the rosewater she uses in some of her preparations lending everything a slightly rosy quality. Your shop is earthier, more resinous. Neither is better. They are two different versions of the same craft, which is what you are. Two different practitioners of something old enough that no one holds the whole of it. The bell over Greenmere's door is different from yours. Higher, lighter, a quick little sound, and it announces you before you are fully inside. In here. The voice comes from beyond the counter, from the back, and you know it immediately. Precise. Warm. The voice of someone who says the words they mean and knows how to listen to other people saying theirs. You pass through the shop, shelves on both sides, the dried herbs hanging lower here than in your own shop, close enough to brush if you are not careful, which is not carelessness but philosophy. Sable believes proximity to the materials matters, and through the half-opened door into the back room. Sable Greenmere is at the work table, and she is doing what she is most often doing when you find her at the work table, which is examining something with considerable attention. Today, it is a sheaf of dried plant material, which she is holding up to the light from the window above the table, turning it slowly, looking at it the way you might look at a letter that is interesting but written in a hand you are only partially fluent in. She glances up when you come in. Her hair is braided and pinned today, as it almost always is. Thick dark hair, the braid wound in a particular way she has done so many times it is automatic, held with two pins whose positions never quite match but always hold. Her reading glasses are on her forehead. Her apron is the one she refuses to remove, which has been through many washes and is now a complex record of its own history in stains that are all plant-derived and mostly green or amber or occasionally the purple of berries in season. Behind her ear, a small sprig of rosemary. Autumn, as it should be. You came, she says. Not surprised. Simply noting the fact, in the register of things that are pleasing. I said I would. People say they will come by all the time. She sets down the plant material and turns fully to face you. You actually come. It's one of the things about you. You are not sure how to respond to this, so you go to the work table and look at what she was examining. Elderflower. You ask. Elderflower. She picks it up again. Tell me what you think. You take a portion of it from her, and hold it to the light, as she was doing. Elderflower dried is different from elderflower fresh in the way that many things dried are different from fresh. Smaller, compressed, some of the delicacy of the living flower present only as echo. But the quality of this batch, even dried, is apparent. The color has stayed well, the cream pale of good elderflower rather than the brown pale of elderflower that dried too fast or in too much sun. And the smell, you bring it closer and breathe in, is still there. Clean, almost honeyed. The particular sweet airiness of elder that is very different from any other flower. That's good, you say. It's very good. She takes it back with the slight possessiveness of someone who is enjoying a new thing. She's been growing it at the edge of a sheltered south-facing garden, she says. Less wind. She thinks that's what makes the difference. Less stress to the flower. Less stress to the flower. Sable nods, with the satisfaction of a confirmation that proves a theory she has been holding since last year. I told her so in my last letter. She was skeptical. Now she agrees. How much did she send? Enough that I can spare you some. She goes to the shelf at the back of the workroom, a large shelf, categorically organized in a way that has its own internal logic, not alphabetical but relational, things kept near the things they work with. She takes down a square tin with a press-fit lid, opens it. The elderflower smell immediately fills the small room. You both stand in it for a moment. Yes, you say. Yes, she agrees. She measures out a portion into a paper packet and folds it with quick, precise hands, and writes on the paper in her small clear handwriting. You look around the workroom while she does this. Sable's workroom is a room that has been used for the same purpose for 3 generations, and it shows. Not in disorder. It is, in fact, very organized, but in the way that a long-used space accumulates the character of its use, the way the surfaces and the shelves and the ceiling hooks all seem to know what they are for without being told. The ceiling is lower here than in the main shop. The window faces a small garden. Through the glass you can see the end of the season in the garden. The herbs cut back, the tender things brought in, the beds mulched, but still some green in the hardier plants, the sage, the feverfew, the large rosemary that must be 20 years old at minimum, and which dominates one entire corner of the garden with the authority of something that intends to be here for 20 more. Your garden's still going, you say. She follows your gaze. The rosemary will go until the hard frost. Maybe after. She finishes folding the packet, passes it to you. I keep threatening to bring it in for the winter and then I don't, because where would I put it? It seems to be fine. It knows what it's doing. It knows what it's doing, she agrees. There is a quality to conversations with Sable that you value, which is difficult to name. She speaks with precision and expectation that you will follow, that you will contribute, that the thing being spoken about deserves real thought. There is no laziness in how she converses. But there is also warmth, which makes the precision feel like generosity rather than exactness. You ask if she has a moment. I have a few, she says, and she goes to the small kettle that lives on the backroom stove and checks the water level, and sets it to heat. She makes tea from a blend she has been working on since early autumn. Still adjusting it, she says, but close now, and it is made with the elderflower from the new delivery and a small amount of linden blossom and something else you cannot immediately identify, something faintly sweet and slightly green, like new grass but warmer. What's the third thing, you ask? She considers whether to tell you, in the way she considers things. Not withholding, just thinking. Dried meadowsweet. Very small amount. It's not in the taste so much as underneath it. You taste it again with this information. The meadowsweet, now that you know to find it, is there. A very light almond quality, a little distance below the elderflower. It lifts the blend slightly, gives it something. It's good, you say. It's almost good. She holds her own cup carefully. The proportions aren't quite where I want them. The linden is slightly too present in the finish. A pause. But close. You sit on one of the two stools at the small table in the corner of the workroom, the table that is there for the purpose of sitting and talking while orders are prepared, a piece of furniture so embedded in the rhythm of the apothecary that it is impossible to imagine the room without it. The wood is marked with rings from cups, and the particular impression of weight in two spots where elbows have rested for years. Sable sits across from you. How is the shop? She asks. Quiet. Good. You think of the passion flower steeping in the back room, the green bottle on the shelf, the way the morning light had reached the amber bottles when you left. I started the sleep draft batch this morning. The large batch, for winter? The beginning of it. 2 days steeping first. She nods. I've been running low on the griefies. She says this practically, not heavily. This is how she talks about the preparations, with the matter-of-fact care of someone who treats the needs of the people she serves as real and deserving of her full attention and no drama. I'll need to come by later in the week, if you have any finished stock. I have 2 jars. I'll put one aside. Thank you. She drinks her tea, gazes at the garden through the window. Marin stopped in yesterday. She mentioned you had found something. She found it, you say. I received it. A bottle. An old one. From the harbor. Sable is quiet for a moment, looking at the rosemary through the window. She said it was very green. Very green. You think about how to say the rest of it. And something, I don't know. Something in the glass. Something that's in the glass, not the contents. The contents are long gone. But the glass itself seems present, Sable says. You look at her. She meets your look evenly. Not as if she knew you were going to say something like that, but as if the word was already in the room and she named it. This is one of the things about Sable Greenmere. She does not make surprising things more or less surprising than they are. She receives them where they are. Present, you agree. My grandmother had a bowl, she says. She made remedies in it for years. There was a quality to it by the end, or maybe it was always there. I never saw it before she'd had it a long time, a kind of weight. Not heavy, just present, aware. The bowl after the grinding, you say. Exactly. A small nod. The mortar that has been a mortar long enough. You sit with this. Outside, a bird lands in the rosemary bush and immediately departs, as though it arrived to confirm the bush was still there and found its information satisfactory. Bring it by sometime, Sable says. I'd like to see it. I will, you say. And you will. You stay another half hour. In that time you talk about the elderflower preparation. Sable has an idea about combining it with the sleep draft, not as a primary ingredient but as a grace note, something to soften the entry into the valerian's depth, and you agree to try it with the batch you've started, a small portion, and see. You talk about the autumn. The way this year's has come in softer than last year's, the rain gentle rather than insistent, the temperatures not yet cold enough to drive everyone fully indoors. Sable says this is good for the garden. Last year's hard, early frost caught her with things still in the ground that she'd intended to bring in. You ask about her grandmother's methods, which is always a good question to ask, and she responds as she always does, with careful detail and a quiet pleasure, the pleasure of someone who was taught something worth learning and is still discovering the full extent of what they were taught. Her grandmother had a practice of noting the weather on every preparation she made. Not formally, just a small mark in the margin of the recipe, an abbreviated symbol for cloud, sun, rain, frost. Sable had found these notes when she was reviewing the old recipe books as a young woman learning the craft and had been puzzled by them for years before she began to understand. Some of the preparations came out differently in different weather, she says. Not dramatically. Subtly. The sleep draft, for instance. The batches she made in autumn rain were consistently rated by her patients as the most effective. She couldn't explain it. She just kept noting it. And do you note it now? A small smile. I do. And I think she was right, Sable says. Though I couldn't explain it, either. You look at the window. The morning outside the garden has clouded slightly, the clear early quality giving way to a thinner, more ordinary autumn gray. Still bright, but the direct sun gone behind something. Then my batch should be good, you say. Very good, she agrees. You take your leave before the square gets much busier. The market will be at its liveliest for another hour and then begin to wind down, people heading home with their Thursday things, and you have a full morning behind you and an afternoon of gentle work ahead. Sable walks you to the door. In the main shop, you pass the place where the dried herbs hang from the ceiling, and you duck the familiar low bunch of dried rosemary that has always been exactly at head height, and Sable does not duck it, having calibrated her movement to it long ago, and you think as you always think in this space about the particular pleasure of being in a place where someone else's comfort is so thoroughly embedded in the architecture. At the door. Next Thursday? She asks. Next Thursday. You agree. The bell, high and bright, sounds behind you, and you are back in Market Square with the honey and the mushroom porcini and the dried flower arrangement and the packet of elderflower folded in Sable's handwriting, and the morning is moving along in its Thursday way, and the smell of Fenwick's bread, remarkable, is still in the air. You stand for a moment at the edge of the square. The old oak is above you, losing its last leaves in the quiet way it prefers. One drifts down as you watch. It lands on the cobblestone near your foot, and you step over it carefully. It has landed exactly where it intended to land. On the way back through the Ink Quarter, you hear Wren Foss before you see her. The sound is specific, the rhythmic all-in-thread sound of a bookbinding in progress, which comes from the open shutter of her workshop at street level, the one that faces the passage. She works with the shutter open as long as the weather allows it, which she has told you is because she likes the ambient sound of the street while she works, likes the feeling of being inside while the world passes outside, which you understand completely. You slow as you pass. Through the open shutter you can see a portion of the workshop, a long wooden table, very cluttered in a way that is clearly organized by a logic foreign to anyone who is not Wren. Stacks of pages. Lengths of linen thread on wooden spools. Leather pieces in various stages. A smell of paste and bookbinding glue that is its own very specific thing, slightly sweet, very particular to this room. Wren herself, at the far end of the table, visible in pieces through the shutter. The hasty knot of hair above the collar of her work coat, one hand pressing a spine into a brass block while the other guides thread through in a pattern that looks automatic but is not. You have watched her work enough to know that each stitch is considered, Each one part of a sequence she is tracking in some part of her mind she keeps dedicated to the task. She looks up, sees you. "Oh," she says. "Good morning." And then, quickly, as though she has been meaning to say this for some time, "I keep meaning to come by." "I know," you say. "Thursday market." She winces slightly. "I always mean to." And then, she gestures at the table, which requires no additional explanation. "Another time," you say. "Another time," she agrees. And then, with more certainty, "I will actually come. This week." You believe her. "I have the new batch of sleep draft going," you say. "If you need some before the winter." Her face does the thing it does when something lands correctly, a small brightening, not a smile exactly, more like an interior thing made briefly visible. "I'll come this week," she says again, and this time she sounds like she means it enough to make it true. You walk on. The all sound resumes behind you, steady and particular, accompanying your walk until the passage curves and it fades. Back on Sable Street. The door of the shop opens and the bell gives its welcome, and the smell is everything it should be. The beeswax and chamomile, the stove still going in the back corner, the particular layered depth of a room that has been building its atmosphere for years. The morning's work with the passion flower is part of the smell today, earthier, adding a new note to the familiar chord. You hang up your coat. Set the basket on the counter. Take out the honey jars and put them away. The wildflower in its place in the kitchen cabinet in the back room, the late summer in the front room as a shop jar, a small amount kept for the grief-ease tea blend in which a little honey rounds something that would otherwise be slightly too sharp. The dried flower arrangement goes on the counter by the window. You spend a moment placing it correctly, not centered, slightly to the left, so the morning light falls across it at the angle that makes the amber and rust colors deepen. Yes, like that. The elderflower packet you put on the work table in the back room, where it will wait for day 3 of the sleep draft when you will decide whether to try Sable's suggestion of adding it in small quantity. You stand in the back room for a moment. The passion flower jar is exactly where you left it, lid sealed, content working in its slow, patient way. You don't open it, there is nothing to see yet, nothing to check, the steeping does not require supervision. But you rest a hand on the lid of the jar for a moment, the way you might rest a hand on the cover of a book you are glad to have, and then you take your hand away and go back to the front room. There is nothing urgent. This is, you have come to understand, not the absence of something but the presence of something. The particular quality of an afternoon in a shop in autumn when the morning's tasks are done and the next thing has not yet arrived. A rest between notes. You take your stool. Your mug of tea, cold now, made fresh this morning, you set to warm on the stove. And you wait, pleasantly, for the afternoon to show you what it has. It shows you 2 customers. The first comes an hour after you return, a man you know by face and approximately by name, something beginning with R, a short name, you have it on the tip of your mind each time he comes in and it disappears each time he leaves, which is a peculiarity of your memory you have accepted, who lives on the far end of Fenwick Lane and who comes in once a month for the clarity tonic. He is the schoolteacher, though when you see him you are never quite certain, because his manner outside the school is different from the careful, considered manner he brings to picking up his tonic. Today he seems a little better than usual. You notice things like this without intending to. It is one of the occupational qualities of the work, this noticing. He carries himself differently when he is well. Slightly more upright. The slight tightness around his eyes that you associate with the particular kind of tired that the clarity tonic addresses is not there today. The usual, you ask. The usual, he confirms. You take down one of the small green bottles, the clarity tonic in a lighter glass than the sleep draught, which you have always found appropriate, and you bring it to the counter, and he pays, and you exchange the small currency of brief pleasant conversation that this transaction always produces, the weather and the market and a question about how the autumn batch is going, to which you give a true and brief answer. He tucks the bottle into his coat pocket. "Thank you," he says, as he always says. "Of course," you say, as you always say. And the bell sounds, and the door closes, and you write the entry in the ledger in your small steady hand, and the shop returns to its pleasant afternoon quiet. The second customer comes as the Harbour Bell rings 2. You hear the bell first, 2 strokes, even, absorbed by the afternoon air, and then footsteps on the cobblestones outside, slow and slightly uneven, the step of someone being careful. The door opens. It is a woman you recognize. She lives on Cutter's Row, near the harbour, in one of the smaller stone houses. You do not know her well. You know that she lost someone, a husband, or perhaps a brother. Marin mentioned it once in the careful oblique way Marin mentions things she thinks are worth knowing without making them into events, and that she has been through a long winter of it. That was last year. This year she looks different. Not entirely well, perhaps, but different in the way of someone who has moved through the worst of something and found the other side. She asks, quietly, for the grief-ease tea. "Of course," you say. You take down one of the jars, the blend you finished last month, chamomile and a small amount of rose petal, and a tiny measure of sweet marjoram, which sounds unlikely but which your grandmother used and which you have continued because it works, in the subtle way these things work. Not by removing grief but by making it slightly more bearable to inhabit. You wrap it carefully. And because the jar is near full and the day has been good to you, you give her a portion extra. She notices when you put it on the counter. She looks up at you. "It's a good batch," you say simply. She takes it. She says thank you in a way that means something more than thank you, and you receive it with a small nod that means you understand. The door. The bell. The street. You sit for a moment after she has gone with your hands on the counter, feeling the grain of the old wood. This is the other part of the work. Not the compounding, not the ordering, not the careful maintenance of the shelves. This. The people who come in carrying things they can't set down, and the small and particular help that you can offer, and the moment after, when the door has closed and the shop is quiet again, and you are aware of having been useful in a way that matters. You breathe. You write the entry in the ledger. You go to make more tea. The afternoon passes in increments of pleasant work. You reorganize the front shelf, not because it needs reorganizing, but because there is a pleasure in it, in handling the bottles one by one and returning them to their places with renewed certainty about where their places are. You find a small chip in one of the amber bottles that you had not noticed before, a tiny absence on the rim, not damaging to the bottle's function, just evidence of its age and its life. You run your thumb along it and decide you like it, and put the bottle back with slightly more care than you gave the others. You write a letter to the supplier on the coast who provides the valerian, asking about the winter stock and whether the harvest this year was good. The valerian harvest varies more than most things. A wet summer helps it or hurts it depending on the drainage of the field, and you have learned to check in before assuming. You dust the lower shelves, which do not strictly need dusting but benefit from the attention. You take the rosemary from the windowsill and turn the pot so the side that has been facing away from the light faces toward it, which the plant will not require in any urgent way but which seems courteous. Small acts. Small attentions. The rhythm of an afternoon that asks nothing of you except your presence in it. By 4 o'clock the light is changing. It happens earlier now than it did a month ago, the light beginning its afternoon retreat around the hour when you would have expected it to be at its height in summer, the quality of it shifting from the clear, honest light of midday to something golden and oblique and slightly melancholy in the pleasantest possible way. The particular quality of autumn afternoon light, which does not weaken so much as angle, which finds the sides of things rather than the tops of them, which makes every object slightly more three-dimensional than it seemed in the honest noon. The amber bottles. In this light they are extraordinary. You stand behind the counter, and you look at them the way you sometimes look at them in this hour, which is not with the practical eye of someone checking stock, but with the simple eye of someone looking at beautiful things. The amber glass holds the afternoon light and transforms it, takes the gray gold of autumn afternoon and deepens it, returns it amber, returns it honey, makes of the late light something richer than it arrived as. This room, this late light, these bottles. You have been in this shop for, you count, without urgency, 12 years? 13. The precision does not matter. Long enough that the shop is not a place you are in but a place that is in you. Long enough that when you think of yourself here, at this counter, in this light. It is a good thing to be in the right place. You have known people who are not in their right place and you have seen what that looks like, the subtle restlessness of it, the way the world around a person can be objectively fine and something in them still not quite settle. You settled here immediately. The day you came in and ran your hand along this counter for the first time, and smelled the beeswax and the old herbs and the particular mineral quality of the stone walls, you settled. As though some part of you recognized it before the rest of you had caught up. Your grandmother would have said it was the shop choosing you. You are not certain whether you believe that. But you are not certain you don't believe it, either. The green bottle on the back shelf catches the late light. Just for a moment, the sun angles through the small window and finds it directly, and the old clouded glass holds the light in its particular way, and you see again what you saw last night in the candle. Not an emanation, not a glow, but something more like presence. A quality of attention. A glass that is aware of being looked at. And then the light shifts, and it is a bottle. You look at it for another moment. Then you go to put the kettle on. The Harbour Bell rings 5, and then 6. Between the two, you make the last preparations of the day. You add the entry about the dried flower arrangement to the ledger, not because a shop purchase for yourself is a proper ledger entry, but because you find the completeness of recorded days satisfying and don't like gaps. You check the stove. Good. You refill the water ewer, not from the square well, it is too late for that now, but from the communal barrel at the end of Sable Street that is there for exactly this purpose, evening water when the well is too far. The evening air outside is cold now. Genuinely cold. The cold of a day that has decided by its afternoon that it is finished with warmth, and it smells of the rain that has not come back yet but is thinking about it. Coming. Tomorrow, perhaps. The cobblestones are still wet from last night and the evening adds more damp to them, a persistent wetness, the street becoming something between stone and reflection. You come back inside. Lock the door with the particular two-stage process it requires. The bolt, and then the small lever above the bolt, which the door has needed since before you arrived here and which you have not fixed and will not fix, because it is its own small liturgy at the end of every day. The shop. You stand in it as you stood in it last night, taking it in. The same, and slightly different. The dried flower arrangement new on the counter. The elderflower packet in the back room. The passion flower steeping. The green bottle in its new old place. And on the table by the window, a small thing you had not put there yourself. You approach it. It is a jar, small, wide, unlabeled, sealed with a cork and a small square of cloth over the cork, tied with kitchen string. Inside, something golden and dark. You pick it up. The inside of the glass is slightly fogged from whatever is within. Honey. The late summer buckwheat, by the color. There is a small folded paper wedged under the jar. The handwriting is Marin's, short, spaced, unhurried. For your winter stock. Saw her at the market before she packed up. Didn't want to ring the bell. That is the whole of the note. You stand and hold the jar for a long moment. The warmth of it travels through the glass to your palm. The late summer buckwheat honey, for your winter stock. Left without ceremony, without announcing itself, because this is how Marin operates. Quietly, practically, with the economy of someone who has learned that the gesture is the thing and the fuss around it is usually less. You set it on the counter beside the dried flower arrangement. The amber glass of the honey jar in the last of the evening light is the same color as the bottles on the left shelf. You look at it and feel something that is the word, fortunate, made physical. You take the candle from beside the door, the one that lives here for this specific purpose, and you light it with a long match, and you carry it to the back shelf. You stand before the old bottles. The green bottle. The honey jar's warmth still in your palm. The day has been full without being demanding. The morning routine, the sleep draft begun, the market, the elderflower in Sable's workroom, the conversation about weather and preparations in grandmother's notes, the 2 customers in the afternoon, the late light on the amber glass, and now this, the evening closing, the candle, the shop. Good day, you say, to no one in particular. Or to all of it at once. The green bottle does not glow tonight. It is simply green glass, old and held and part of the shelf. That is enough. You carry the candle through to the back. The routine of closing is a short ritual and a good one. Bank the stove. You have it down to a low and patient warmth that will hold until morning, which is the art of it, giving it exactly enough to last. Check the backroom window, which you left cracked for the air this morning, and which now, given the cold outside, you close properly, the wooden frame swelling with the damp of the season into a tight fit that pleases you. The work table, clear now. The passion flower jar. You pick it up and move it very gently, setting it at the center of the shelf, where it will have the most even temperature through the night. Not that it requires this. But again, courtesy. The small window faces north from the back room, and through it the first stars are appearing in the patches between the clouds. The rain is not tonight after all, or perhaps only very late tonight, because the sky is more open than it was at 5 o'clock, the clouds broken and moving. The stars come and go between them. Thistlewick below the sky is a cluster of lit windows and chimneys and the dark shapes of old buildings, and the sound that reaches you through the closed window is the sound of an autumn evening in a harbor town, the distant creak of boats, the Harbour Bell beginning its 7 o'clock announcement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, absorbed into the evening as it always is, as it always will be. You count the strokes. 7. You breathe. In the room beyond the back room, you set the candle on the table. Take off your coat. The day's coat, the going-out coat, which smells now of Sable's workroom, and the Thursday market, and the cold outdoor air of the afternoon, and underneath all of that, the shop. It always smells of the shop. You hang it. You sit on the edge of the cot. The evening through the small window is quiet and dark and star-broken. The last sounds of the day filter through. A door, a voice at the distance that makes voices unintelligible but not unpleasant, the specific slow creak of the building settling into the cooler night, a sound you have slept through so many times it now sleeps alongside you without waking you. Your eyes are heavy. You have eaten. Not much, enough. The bread and the last of the mushroom paste you bought at the market, which was everything you had hoped it would be, profound and earthy, and something you will think about in ordinary moments for days. You have been outside in the cold air. You have worked with your hands. You have talked with Sable and stood at the edge of Market Square watching the oak lose its Thursday leaves and heard wren fosses all through the open shutter of the Ink Quarter. You have received a jar of honey left without ceremony by a friend. The candle on the table is the last light. You reach for it. Before you blow it out you hold it for a moment, the flame small and steady in the still air of the room. Tomorrow, the sleep draft, day 2 of steeping, which requires nothing of you. The letter to the Valerian supplier to finish and bring to Morse at the post office, who will receive it very seriously, as Morse receives all letters, as though each one is carrying something irreplaceable. Petra's chandlery, for the amber bottles you still haven't gone to ask about. And Wren Foss, who said she would come by this week and who you believe will actually come. The days arrange themselves ahead like rooms in a house you know well. None of them demanding. All of them themselves. You blow out the candle. The dark settles. Through the window, stars, between clouds. Moving clouds, the autumn kind, unhurried. The Harbour Bell has finished its 7-stroke announcement, and the town is in the quiet that follows the 7 o'clock bell, the deepening quiet of evening. Somewhere toward the harbour, a lamp in someone's window. A rectangle of warm light on wet cobblestones below. You lie back. The cot. The blanket, familiar and sufficient. The pillow, which has held your head through many seasons of this same room. Outside, Thistlewick goes about its evening. Bramble Oast will be behind the bar at the Thistle and Tide, wiping down the counter in his perpetual way, telling someone about the chowder. Captain Callis, if he is in port, which he may be, you have not confirmed this, will be doing whatever Callis does in his evenings, which is a thing you have never quite pictured. Sable Greenmere, still adjusting the proportion of linden in her new blend. Old Fenwick, at the end of Fenwick Lane, in the long-inhabited warmth of his kitchen, where the fire is never out. Marin Ashvale, at home by now. The rope in her pocket. Whatever she looks at in the evenings, whatever she is thinking in that comfortable, unhurried way of hers. The honey on the counter. The green bottle on the back shelf. The passion flower, steeping. All of it here. All of it where it should be. All of it the same as it was yesterday and the day before and the 12 or 13 years before that, and the generations before you, and the generations before them. This town on this harbour at the foot of these mountains, worn smooth by time in the way of things that have been here long enough to stop being remarkable and start being simply true. You close your eyes. The clouds outside move across the stars and uncover them again. The building breathes. The stove holds its warmth. Somewhere, a cat, not Bindle. Bindle is at the library, keeping his particular watch over the reading loft and the old armchairs and the salt-smelling shelves. Some other cat, one of the night cats of Sable Street, crosses the wet cobblestones without a sound. The town is very quiet now. The night has taken it in, as the night always takes it in, as gently and completely as a hand taking up something it has carried many times before and knows the weight of. You know the weight of this. The weight of the end of a good day, in the right place, in the right life. It is not heavy. It is only full. And you are falling, slowly, into it. The way you fall every night. Into the dark that is not empty. Into the quiet that holds you. Into the familiar, safe. Into the warm. into the town breathing around you, into the harbor below, into the stars, into the very still, into